this video I'm going to basically be talking over everything I've learned about narcissism and things that have allowed me to fully, I'm pretty sure now, completely, sorry if my hair looks grey, so I just got out of the shower and my hair is just ever more never fixed. At this point it's just really just, the hair glue is still in there and it's struggling. So I just want to talk about everything that's allowed me to free myself completely from narcissistic relationships. Like, I'm not going to lie, the thing about narcissists is that they'll often want to come back anyway, so even if you were to change your mind about any of these things, like, you know, it's not exactly going to be, you're never going to be able to get them back, if you ask me. But I've basically been making notes over the last sort of few, like, days, actually, to talk about all of the things that I've sort of learned. And it's kind of helped me break down a lot of sort of like world concepts that may have come from the idea of narcissistic relationships, and also my personal experience with it, and also just things like that. So I'm just going to go through my list. I've got like notes, I'm just going to like chat through them, because I've learned this from like a lot of different videos, so hopefully this will be kind of informative, even for me. So basically, the idea of dominating and the idea that someone feels alien as from like childhood or whatever, can be from narcissistic projections. Obviously some of this stuff might be obvious to people that have done any sort of research on narcissism, but if you haven't, then projection is where you project your own insecurities on someone else so you don't have to deal with them yourself, and it can give this real sense of like shame. It's like they talk about the idea of either, I might get a bit holistic in certain areas because it does just help understand it better. Shame shifting is a massive thing with narcissists, that they have this massive amount of shame just intrinsically because of their, you know, innate deficits as a person, and in that they try and project that on other people in order to make them carry their shame. So often when people are gaslighted, which basically means, I'm going to use the terminology but I'll explain it, gaslighting is where you try and basically convince someone of a different reality to what is actually happening, even in truth, even over your own perception. Like if someone does something, they might say, oh, they didn't do it, even though they did. So that's gaslighting, and it can cause a lot of problems, a hell of a lot of problems. If this happens, someone could eventually become convinced that the shame of another person is actually, like the narcissist shame is the victim's shame. So they can, or the person that's getting abused by the narcissist, hopefully the idea of narcissism is to heal, survive, thrive. So I think we're coming into the thrive. We've been in the thrive for a while, where we're fully blossoming. It's okay, and I hope to help other people get to that point if ever anyone else is in my boat. So yeah, basically if you're in that shame space, you basically internalize shame that someone else will then project on you, because the thing about narcissist mindset is, I think the more you think, like, I'm not saying I think about it all the time, but the guy that was talking about it quite openly and freely, you could really tell he clicked with it. Like, it's one of those things where at school, like, when you get a concept and you can just sort of run with it then, like, and you don't really, like, it's a really, really complex thing, but once you actually understand it and you can apply it, it's really helpful and is really freeing and just saves a lot of time and energy, and helps you build a lot of discernment against certain people, and it's helping me to build a lot of discernment because I've just dealt with these people far too long and I just can't cope with it anymore. Obviously you have to deal with certain people in parts of life, but the great thing about this is once you have healed and learned and thrived and whatever, you just don't, you can't unsee what you see when you learn about narcissists and stuff, so I ain't going back, let's put it that way. So anyway, and I'll talk about later on how to fully separate, how to leave relationships, myths that might be blocking you from leaving relationships, and how to fully think about leaving, what freedom actually means. I'll just bring that up now because it gives a bit of a nice, it's not really how I would usually put it, I like to usually make it chronological, but how you would how you'd think about leaving, as if them being out of your life. There's a lot of threats mentally because they've kind of traumatized you to think they can come back, they can hoover you in, they can text you, they can try and love bomb you again. Love bombing is where they put like an excessive amount of admiration and love and promises towards you to suck you into them. It's a false manipulative facade that they kind of put forward to draw you in, because they know if they started abusing you straight away, you wouldn't want to go near them with a barge pole. So they kind of do this in order to get what they need from you. This could be sex, it could be emotional support, it could be narcissistic supply, which, if you don't know what that is just energy, basically attention, because these people are pretty gross and disgusting in a lot of ways. A lot of people don't even want to deal with them from the off, so they need that supply in order to live. And because they're just basically energy suckers, they need that stuff because they're unable to make it for themselves. I'll just quickly say, I don't know, I think we're getting on to that point, but narcissists are, I'm about to get onto that, so I'll leave that there. But back to what I was saying before, just to give a bit of hope, there is an end goal. I mean, obviously it looks different for everyone, but there's a community of people that understand this stuff, and it's really prevalent on the internet and on YouTube. If you want to look for it, it's probably a lot of places online where people meet in person to talk about it. I've seen it online in person meetups and stuff that this happens. So I can't honestly remember what I was talking about before that. I've kind of gone off, but I think I was starting to tangent anyway. So yeah, progressions. You're not responsible for their actions. It helped me think a lot about free will and the universal laws, which I might do a separate video on. But as I said, things like free will, things like the law of attraction, stuff like that. You're not responsible for another person's actions. You're responsible for handling how they respond to you. I've just realised I was talking about shame. I'll just quickly finish that thing on shame, which is that if you internalise someone else's shame, it's not your shame to have, but they will make you feel shameful, because the way a narcissist works is if you cause them narcissistic injury, which is basically doing anything, you can cause them narcissistic injury by literally doing nothing at all but going about your life, because it might trigger their shame centers for some reason, and they might just become jealous and just in the worst case scenario create a massive vindictive issue against you. But it's just messed up. Like, some of them I've come across, they're not normal in the head, but there we go, we live and we learn. So hopefully, there we go. But it's just a case of, you know, if they get triggered with shame, they will then have the mindset that because I'll talk about this in a minute, but they have arrested development at a very young age, at a child age. They stop developing emotionally, therefore were emotionally stunted. They did not get to the point where they developed a massive amount of empathy like a lot of normal people that don't have high narcissistic traits. Just to say, I believe I'm a dark I don't want to go into too many things. I just got to put that out as well, so I do want to just chuck it in one video. Whether my camera will die, probably will, but we'll just carry on until that happens. You can be either someone with high narcissistic traits, a dark empath, a typical person, or an empath. And the difference is, if you've got high narcissistic traits, should we talk about the dark triad? Let's just chuck that in there as well, because I don't think I've got that written down. Just to finish the shame thing then. This is probably the worst thing to listen to, so I'm sorry if it's a bit... yeah, so in terms of the shame thing, yeah, you basically don't need to internalise that shame, but they will project more shame on you. They will create shame for you. They might try and smear you, which means they will lie about you. They will try and create a bad image for you in front of other people. That's called smearing. They smear your name to people. When this happens, in my experience, it's best to just let it be, because people that mind don't matter and people that matter don't mind. So it's all lies anyway. If you try and defend yourself, it just gives them more attention and supply, so there's no point trying to defend yourself often in these situations. It depends, you know, unless it was getting physically abusive, then obviously it's a slightly different story. But if it's just verbal and sort of people spreading rumours, then I would just leave it. So in my experience, and so yeah, if they will try and evoke that shame within you, be that projecting their own flaws on you. What I find quite humorous about all this stuff about narcissists is that because they are unaware, like they have cognitive dissonance in their mind of what their actual flaws are, so they will actually project their insecurities quite openly on you, so you're completely aware of how they feel about themselves, because they're unable to sort of take accountability for themselves. They will project that straight away on you, and the issue with this comes when you're brought up with this sort of stuff and you're too vulnerable from a developmental sense to understand on a cognitive level what is happening, and children can't, so that's an issue. But when it happens in adulthood, I find it quite humorous with people that I've especially as I've been able to notice as they project, that they're kind of almost laughing at themselves, but they kind of just try and project it on someone else, if that makes sense. Like, it's really quite humorous because that's how they work. It's how projection works. They can't sit with the feelings that they evoke within themselves, so they have to put that on someone else. So you can evoke shame in someone else by either completely projecting their own issues upon you, which is hilarious because you can tell with anyone with any sort of mental stability, because the thing about narcissists, they don't have good emotional regulation, so they don't really notice that other people can see what they're like and they can see through them. A lot of the time they just sort of are oblivious and go about their day, and often they don't even care. They don't have a high level of shit, like they don't have any shame more or less, so they don't really give a fuck what you think of them as long as they're getting what they need. So that's kind of the mindset that we're dealing with here, and it's this really serious issue. Like, it can cause a hell of a lot of problems, and it has done for me. So anyway, so they can also evoke shame with different types of abuse in terms of sexual trauma. They can just berate you, shout at you, degrade you, manipulate you, be verbally harassing, spread lies about you, swear at you, just anything that will sort of create dominance. The whole thing about narcissists is they're so inadequate within their own egos that they have to feel superior all the time, otherwise they can't cope. Like, that's their inevitable standpoint. They are inadequate. And I'm not gonna lie, like, I would say there's truth in it. I'm not here to judge, but I can understand why they feel that way because they're pretty vile people. So there we go. But because they know that, they can't sit with that themselves, therefore have to displace that. It's actually a very human thing to do. We all displace, actually, and we all have levels of narcissism. I have to just put that out there, but I will differentiate because this is something I had to get to as well, which is that I'll just say the displacing thing first, which is that I just have to write down that levels of narcissism thing because I don't want to leave that out. So we all displace. It's actually a natural psyche way of dealing with life. It's one of our coping strategies. I think I've done this in a past video. So one of our psychologically recognised coping strategies of life. We all displace. Like, if you're stressed about something, you might get a towel and squeeze it and release some of that tension and build up of emotion that's going on within you. That's healthy displacement. Unhealthy displacement is projecting upon another person and trying to cause them harm so you feel better about yourself, which is a, you know, it's a maladaptive pattern at the core. And the idea is that narcissists are scared children that were probably abused as children anyway, but the reason you shouldn't feel empathy towards them or go out of your way to help them in any way, they say hurt people, help people, or hurt people, hurt people. Narcissists hurt people. When you go through childhood trauma, you naturally progress to one or the other end. You naturally progress to empathy, or you naturally progress to narcissism. You can't change that. In the middle, there's a normal person, there's a neutral person. And the idea is, if you lean towards empathy too hard, you will become unhealthy. If you lean towards narcissism too hard, you will become unhealthy. So being central is the best way to go. But because we are all whole as a human being and we have no control over another person, the only thing you can do if you are an empath in this situation, or you are a neutral person in this situation, you're being abused by a narcissist, you can't control their actions towards you, but you can take levels to remove them from your life or deal with them in whatever way that suits you. Restraining order, blocking their number, cutting them out of your life, telling them not to contact you anymore, just not seeing them, giving them excuses. You know, I talk about this later, but they have no hold over you. Really, it's a mindset that can be adopted, and it's very common that people are they assume that they are entitled to either be in your space. I'm covering so much, but narcissists will mirror you, and they'll kind of give you what you want to see. They will project back to you. They'll figure out what you want, and they'll project back to you this fantasy that you appear to want. They'll figure out what you want, and then they'll project that back to you. And it's called mirroring. And when this happens, you sort of are psychologically tricked, because we are like that. All mammals are like that. You know, spiders play dead when they don't want to be killed by a predator. Okay, so as I was saying, hopefully I'm in frame enough and there's nothing sort of blocking the way to offend the screen too much, let's put it that way. So, because my camera ran out and it's charging currently, so I'm going to have to do the rest of it in this video. So, whether this is part 2 or not. Hello. So, yeah, I was talking about how when there's a predator in the wild, and narcissism can be a level of, it can be adaptive, and the way that people and scientists think that narcissism has come about is being adaptive, because as in the wild, when there's like a spider that doesn't want to be killed, it plays dead. Narcissists will pretend and mirror another person when they want something from you, if they feel they can't get it otherwise. It's a facade to trick another person or mammal, and it happens in nature as well. So, but it's maladaptive in general, because once people recognise these patterns, they can see them for what they are, and that it is a lie. But the issue comes when people are fully deceived by these people, and it causes real harm in their life, which is why I'm trying to spread awareness from it, and lots of other people are as well. So yeah, the reason why I wanted to talk about levels of narcissism is that I say we're all on a spectrum, and we are, but even as a dark empath, which I believe I am, and I describe what that was in the last thing, it's where you have narcissistic traits and you have empathic traits. And a typical person has low empathic traits, low narcissistic traits. Ugh. Right, so as I was saying, a narcissistic person, a typical person has low empathic traits, low narcissistic traits, and a dark empath has high narcissistic traits and high empathic traits. So the reasons I talk and I want to fully put forward the difference between different people's levels of narcissism is that, and why they should be held accountable in different ways, is because often a dark empath will have narcissistic traits, but they will use it. It's kind of like, I feel like I look at it a bit of a Robin Hood syndrome, where like I will use my narcissistic traits against people that have really high narcissistic traits and no empathy, that I feel deserve to be shown where they're at. But I try to control my narcissistic traits the way I can and understand that they are there. I don't think I have massively high narcissistic traits. I think I fall more on the borderline spectrum, I'm not gonna lie. But I do have a level of vulnerable narcissism in myself that I've noticed. And I try and take accountability for not take accountability, but I try and be aware of those traits, but also realise that they're part of my personality, and obviously I have to express them to be a healthy person. But I think they're very low. But I know that a typical person, that's my connotation at this point, I've never been proved by scientists, but what I mean is people need to be held differently, accountable for different people, because it's not an excuse saying all people have narcissistic traits. Even empaths have narcissistic traits, because it's part of our humanity and part of our ego to have a level of narcissism that sort of protects us against, you know, not running in front of a bus. Like, you know, if you're an empath and you think someone's having a bad day but they've got a sadistic personality, like maybe I should run in front of his car, and then that way he'll have less of a stressful day because he might be happy that he's ran me over or something. That's like really dark and really weird, but I feel like that's kind of my point in terms of that's why empaths have a level of narcissism, to think I need to live. And in some ways you can look at, you know, is it the need to live is not narcissistic, but my point is we all have a level of ego and regard for ourselves. Narcissists have only a regard for themselves, and there's a spectrum, as I say, in between. So the reasons that we have to be really aware of the different levels and effects of narcissism is that when people have high levels of narcissism and no empathy, that is when serious abuse can occur, and they have genuinely no concern or ability. They have the ability to have concern. The thing about narcissists often is that they do have empathy, but it's really, 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 really low levels, and they often don't use it. They can, I'll put it out there, some narcissists are altruistic, which means they will pretend to want to do nice things for other people in order to get more validation for themselves and feel good about themselves and seem like they are doing good for society, even though it's like a self-gaining thing, and it might be the smallest thing. It's a way of breadcrumbing, basically. So that's an altruistic narcissist. Breadcrumbing is where you give a little tiny bit just to keep someone, you know, on your hamster wheel, basically. I don't feel I'm on anyone's hamster wheel right now, which makes me feel really good. Which is also why I'm doing this video. So, yeah. So I don't think it's an excuse to be used to say that we all have a level of narcissism, because it just kind of puts this, like, broad spectrum upon everyone. And I think it's really unhealthy, and it needs to be a myth that's broken, that in society, there's so many myths in society that I feel like are brought about by toxic and narcissistic environments and people that need to be broken, and that's probably one of them. Yes, we all have a level of narcissism, but it becomes really unhealthy and really detrimental and abusive to other people when people lack that level of empathy. And that's why it's really important to determine if someone has narcissistic traits or not, in order to or if anyone has empathy, if they are because it's hard to tell straight away. Once you've done this work, you can figure out quite quickly if someone's narcissistic or if they are posing as something that they might not be or whatever. I did watch a video on vibration that you can sense even in a person, that kind of gives a bit of a working in it kind of gives a bit of an understanding in how someone is operating. Like, you can tell in people's behaviours, like, and this is what behavioural science is, and I haven't looked into behavioural science, more on the holistic end, but the thing about narcissists is they lie a lot, and there's a phrase, no man is smart enough to keep up with all his lies, or something. And that's one of the things you can figure out. Narcissists have a really high level of paranoia, and this can be quite apparent in their irritability levels, and just the way they sort of vibrate, if you like. And it's very apparent often in even the way they talk. Like, now I'm talking in flow, I feel like calm, in a state of myself generally. I mean, I'm a bit, irritated about this. I've got people walking around the house around me that, but at the same time, I'm in flow with myself. And I'm not saying people can't concentrate and focus if they've got narcissism, that's not what I'm saying, but it's about the way that you think and the sense of that you can come across when you really look out for it. That gives you that sort of level of discernment really early on, even for covert narcissists, which you basically get overt and covert narcissists. I'm definitely going to have to section this out because I don't think it's going to be understandable for many people if it's not. And probably is, because I've said that before. I always say that, but then when I listen to it through, I'm like, yeah, obviously that makes perfect sense. But there we go. So you get overt narcissists, which are very, grandiose in their mind. They don't give a fuck about other people. They're quite open about the fact they don't care. They're quite open about the fact that they just only care about themselves. They're very selfish. They don't really have concern for other people. They will abuse openly, and they don't really care about the consequence. Separate to this, though, it isn't the case that like every single person that is an overt narcissist is a bully, though, because I did a lot of work on schemas by Carl Jung, and I would definitely, that's a whole other video, but I recommend learning about schemas if you're interested in learning about anger schemas or vulnerability schemas. There's like 18 schemas or something, and I found this great YouTube channel for it. They talk about all the different schemas. If someone has an anger schema and a inferiority schema and they're a narcissist, a grandiose narcissist, often like I feel like that's how a bullying personality can come about, because you have this real sense of vulnerability and anger and a maladaptive way of coping with that from whatever your experience was. As I say, I don't think it's important to show empathy for people that are abusive necessarily, and it's important to maintain your empathy as a person that has empathy, in order to put it into things that you can change. Because the thing about narcissists is it's pretty benign. Like, I don't know if benign is the right word, but it's pretty, there's a low level of change that can be made, even in therapy. Apparently, I've watched a YouTube channel with a therapist. I'm not a therapist, but she's a therapist that is certified, and she talks about how there's a really, really low level of change that is made in narcissists. They can act a certain way. Some people are self-aware narcissists and they can pinpoint their traits. I think I actually fall on that level of self-aware narcissism to an extent, but I think I'm actually unaware of a lot of them. But I also think I'm not very narcissistic in general. A lot of my I don't know why we keep cutting it out. There we go. So yeah, I hope I'm gonna be able to get through this whole video in this time because my brain's already like not working. But I'm going to power through a little bit and see how far I can get, because I'm going to just put this in a different video, which is fine. So yeah, some people are self-aware. Also, different types of narcissists you can get are cerebral and also somatic narcissists, where if you are a somatic narcissist, it's more just it's a reaction from your very being. If something makes you angry, we all have a reaction in a part of our body if we feel an emotion. If someone feels angry and it fills their gut, they will shout, they will get angry, they will move their arms, they will flinch, you know what I mean? An attack from that place. Not to say necessarily that they will physically attack or be violent necessarily. Some people are. But it's a case of, you know, if you attack, you will react from a somatic / body level rather than cerebral narcissists. They're calculating. They often plan in advance their moves and strategies before they sort of fully. They kind of plan beforehand, or they do things to manipulate in a certain way because they are using their mind to create that environment. You can also be, when I talked about covert or overt, I think I talked about overt narcissists, but I didn't talk about covert narcissists. Overt narcissists are very grandiose. They're very open in the fact that they're narcissistic, but not in like a positive way. It's not positive openness, like an honesty level, or a spreading awareness or bring truth and joy to the world. It's and like goodness. It's just a case of they honestly don't give any fucks about anyone besides themselves. And honestly they can't, because their ego is so weak that they only have the capacity to cope with themselves because of their arrested development, which I'll further go on to. So when you talk about covert narcissists, they are often not open about the way they are in terms of how they feel about other people. Often though, they are conscious of it, but they don't show it to other people. They go about things in a much more malevolent way, and they sort of go about things like they might sort of have this massive vulnerable mindset, or they might sort of do things that are strange to provoke a shock reaction or an attention reaction or some sort of like energy from someone else, because they don't really express their narcissism in a forward way. They kind of hide it, and sort of it comes out in other ways, if you like, but they're conscious of it. They know what they're doing. So that is a covert and overt narcissist. Yeah, the other way of thinking about them is if they are malignant or altruistic. So a malignant narcissist, so an altruistic narcissist, as I said before, is about, in a previous video, I didn't say it in this one, I don't think, unless I've booked it all into one, which is possible. A altruistic narcissist is where you will basically pretend to have a level of empathy. In some ways it's pretending to have empathy, but it's not about that. It's about trying to look good to the outside eye. They might do good stuff to an extent, but it's for the purpose of themselves, and it's the intention. It's the fact they want to keep a good surface level outlook of themselves. It's all about their appearance to the narcissist. A lot of the time it's about how people perceive them, and also about how they perceive themselves, because a lot of the time they also at times believe these things about themselves because they can't sit with their honest emotions. This is why it gets a bit complicated. You might be a bit like confused, so I'm going to try and get to all of it in different stages. But the altruistic narcissist, as opposed to someone that's genuinely doing something, altruistic as a word means they do things for the goodness of other people and not for their own personal gain. So the difference between someone that does something out of the goodness of their heart and someone that is an altruistic narcissist the altruistic narcissist will, I heard someone talk about someone, for example, running a gala which costs £10,000 to raise £200 and get their name in the newspaper. Someone that does something out of the kindness of their heart might give £10 to someone on the street so they can buy themselves some food and not tell anyone about it. That's the difference. So there we go. And so yeah, those are the types of ones to deal with, because you can't, and it's 3 categories. It's either, yeah, it's the ones I just talked about. So you can either have overt or covert, somatic or cerebral, or malignant or altruistic, and that's how to categorize, because you can be either of any of them. Which I think I heard, if you categorize someone being a certain level of narcissist, it doesn't make them any less harmful. It doesn't make them any less harm to you. It doesn't help you heal. But it does give you a sense of awareness of what they are capable of, what they might do in order to evoke issues within you or try to manipulate you in some way. I have friends or people that I still keep in, like, they're friends that I still deal with that have narcissistic traits, and you know, they don't affect me negatively. They're self-aware, possibly. I don't know. I can't bother to like analyze people that I'm talking about here, but it's a case of not every narcissist that you come into interaction with is going to be abusive to you, because often narcissists will choose a victim, unfortunately. Or some people that are self-aware narcissists will try and go out their way as to not inflict harm. To an extent, they do have a low level of empathy, but at the same time, they can go about their lives without inflicting massive amounts of harm, as opposed to other people that have this, issue that they cannot face, therefore must project on other people. It really depends on the person's circumstance. The thing about narcissists is that, which also goes back to not making excuses for them, is the difference between people that are moved towards empathy and moved towards narcissism is that empaths can heal, because often the thing with empaths is that, even though it's good to aim for neutrality, is that empaths are often abused by narcissists, so therefore once they heal from that, they can handle themselves and they don't abuse other people, and this is where they come into the category of hurt people, help people. Narcissists have a very, very low level of being able to heal themselves. They can't heal themselves, and they often are not self-aware of their behaviours, even though they're very apparent to other people, especially people that are educated like me. But I think even when I wasn't cognitively aware of the inner workings and outer workings of these things, I could still process it in some way. I've had mental health problems which were not helped, let's just say, by these type of people in my life, but I feel like I was still able to, on some level, decipher what was happening. So even people that aren't completely aware, and I think the thing is, once your eyes are open to these things, you'll come across people that aren't educated and they aren't even aware, and these people, I really should write that down actually. Right, so people that are narcissists, they won't often heal from, they can't get over that level. They have arrested development, and therefore will not then just, you won't heal from narcissism. You are sort of stuck there inevitably, so that's just what it is. But there's actually a progression for empaths that can, heal and become sort of somewhat empathic, more humane people. So there we go. But yeah, I want to just quickly touch on this thing called enablers, which I didn't even think to write down because it's something I've learned about quite a while ago. Enablers are people that have either low narcissistic traits, or they are typical people that are unaware of narcissistic traits, and they will sort of enable a narcissist in terms of, they might give them narcissistic supply, they might sort of bolster them in some way to act negatively to another person. They're just there for the narcissist. They don't often see what they're really like. If they do see what they're really like, some enablers are toxic themselves, and they don't really have, they might have their own issues, and they might want to release that anger on another person. so that makes it okay and just in their head to be an enabler. Often if you're uneducated, there's a level of understanding that you might have with an enabler. I'm sure I've enabled massive amounts of my life. I'm trying to step away from enabling as much as I possibly can because I feel like it's not a helpful strategy for anyone. The enablers really are just allowing more energy to be put towards someone that's going to abuse. And you know, the narcissist is going to abuse, therefore reap the consequences, because we do reap what we sow. It says so in the Bible. And I'm not saying like narcissists shouldn't have friends. Like, the thing about narcissists is they need enablers. But it's about being aware, I feel like, for me, within myself, what I'm happy to put energy towards and what I am not happy putting energy towards for the goodness of humanity, in my experience. So, I do think it's not your fault though if energy is sucked from you from their weird antics, because sometimes you do come into contact with these type of things that you can't really be held accountable for. You can't be held accountable for someone else's actions at the end of the day. And that's why it's really hard to untangle a lot of this stuff if it's happened to you for long periods of time, to be able to see that it's someone else's fault and not your fault, even though you're made to feel like it's your fault through things like gaslighting, through things like that. I've explained gaslighting already, so I'm not going to do that. But if this isn't another video, gaslighting is where you make someone doubt their own reality. Yeah, so should we talk about the dark triad? I don't know if that's even worth it. The dark triad is basically narcissists, personalities, and people that are dark empaths do have these traits as well, in part. So the dark triad is psychopathy, machiavellism. I hope I'm saying that right. I always say machiavellism, and then narcissism. That's the dark triad. Psychopathy is lack of remorse, being emotionally cold. Machiavellism is being manipulative in the main and domineering, and narcissism is a grandiosity and perceived superiority and entitlement. So that's kind of what makes up a dark triad person. So there we go. I just want to put that out there. Something else that can be helpful to understand. The idea that life, as I said, this is just notes I've written down from different videos, so it might not be in like I might talk about ending a narcissistic relationship, I might talk about what they're like and stuff. I just kind of put it all in one go. So you towards the end of learning, and once you learn about these people, you can learn to hold back from different people, because you're not entitled to give your energy or energy force or rent in your brain to anyone without your own consent. Like, we are in charge of our own choices. I can't, as I say, we're not in charge of other people's choices towards us. If they do things that are odd and strange, which often they will, to get some sort of level of energy and thief of supply to you, you're not responsible for that. But at the same time, the idea is to hold back eventually and build discernment from it, because it says in the Bible Jesus didn't trust anyone because he knew the heart of man. And having more and more discernment towards different people, because I feel like I was very open and trusting towards people, and that was the way I swung from my experience with this sort of stuff. And it's not a good thing. Like, you should have discernment. I'm not blaming myself for that period, but you know, it should be something. It's something that you definitely build once you understand this stuff. Life is easier without the narcissist. Your definition of success, opportunities, that you can be opened up to, in terms of often this kind of goes along with the myths that I was talking about in terms of what you can experience from these sort of situations, is that if often your definition of success can be based on what they want you to believe in order to keep you trapped in a relationship with them. The opportunities, I will also put out there though, the devil cannot take away what God gave you. Therefore, I'm not saying people are the devil. I'm not giving them a get out clause because they are under demonic influence or something, even though I feel like it is a demonic influence as
is somewhat affecting them, but it's also their own personalities that are doing this to that. But I don't know, because it says in the Bible, like, our fight is not with the flesh, it's with the spiritual realm. But I also heard a mind frame to say these people are aware of what they're doing. They are allowing these spirits into their bodies and minds. They are, you know, stunted in development. They are the personality types of these people. I don't think it's fair to just put it all on the spirit realm and be like, oh, they're under demonic attack or something, because they are acting in a nasty, malevolent, manipulative, aggressive, abusive way. That's not really an excuse for a narcissist. It's not really that. It's not like they're mentally tormented because of a mental breakdown. It's because they are emotionally stunted, and it's a personality disorder. Not to say that they don't suffer from it, but that's not really your responsibility to handle. So life is easier without a narcissist. Yeah, so your definition of success, like, often you define success in a more positive light, or a different light, when you are able to access that within yourself more and be more conscious of it, and just discard any sort of success that might have been, you know, put towards you. If someone is a communal narcissist, they want to look good. If someone is a communal narcissist, they want to look good for themselves, so they might sort of evoke different qualities within you that might make them look better to other people for themselves. Like, oh, this person has got great talent, like, you know, that's my wife, like, you know, let's look at that, like, they're so great, I paid for those lessons, like, look, I'm literally her manager, like, all this stuff. So that's the type of success that can be pushed on you by people that have narcissistic traits that you might not even want for yourself. I've heard this happen. I saw this video of this girl on Dr. Phil show called Rose or something. I don't even want to talk about her name, doesn't even matter. Forget about why I said by the name, but I don't think it really matters. But she was a doctor. I think she got her like degree or her master's or doctorate degree as a GP or something, and then wanted to become a singer, and her family basically disowned her because they thought that she was like gone insane or something, because she didn't want to basically serve the narcissistic mother and family system anymore. So they basically were gaslighting her and trying to tell her that she was crazy, because she had some like mental health problems. But the thing about narcissists, they will use strands of the truth to support their own narrative. So it kind of seems more truthful, even though it's actually based on lies and something to serve themselves. So that was just a bit of you know, encouragement for me. So yeah, as I was saying, they'll push their way into a situation. A massive thing with narcissists is that they often will talk and talk and talk and talk, or just feel entitled to run the situation, or consistently make it about them in some way. You know, and that's kind of how they get their supply. They just sort of ramble on about things that they you know, want to you know, talk about. You might be like, oh, I've got a YouTube channel and I think I consistently make discernment against what is healthy in a person, what is me sharing and imparting wisdom that I've helped to help other people, which, yeah, might have traits of narcissism, but it's not to dominate and, you know, necessarily, maybe to an extent. I don't want to dominate my audience, but at the same time, I don't know who else I would be dominating at this point. It's only me on the camera. But I feel like, you know, if someone is coming into a situation to dominate and kind of gain supply and thieve supply of other people, and cause abuse and harm to other people, that's a difference between consistently talking about themselves in order to, you know, rule a situation. As I say, it starts to make more and more sense as I get through it, I suppose. Yeah, narcissists are stuck in this arrested development stage of childhood, and they don't tend to develop empathy in the same way that people that aren't stunted in development, aren't stunted in childhood are. I did hear that people can be stunted at different ages depending on different issues that you have. As I said, I'm just going to put this out there because I heard this by someone, but whether this is fully
it was by a professional, but apparently, like for example, if you have borderline traits, you're stuck at that level of teenagehood where you're trying to make friends with different people, but you keep feeling rejected by different people. Borderline is not based around being rejected in teenagehood. It can be a factor. Borderline is a massive mental health issue which has a lot of components to it, which I'm not even qualified to talk about. But apparently that's the stage of arrested development for borderline people. Psychopaths are at the stage where they've been so, I think, just ignored by a lot of people, so they just want to be they don't even care, they just want to go about life and do things in their own way to get what they need, and they don't really have concern for other people because they don't feel that other people have concern for them. That's the stage of arrested development of a psychopath. A sociopath's arrested development stage is when they're not getting anything they need, they feel they need to manipulate in order to get what they need, and yeah, there's different stages of arrested development for different people. We're talking specifically about narcissism here, but I will say that covert narcissists have been said, or I think this is what is the case. Covert narcissists are also psychopaths apparently, because they are it's a level of manipulation that is involved in psychopathy. It's actually this primary and secondary psychopathy, right? So when you've got borderline traits, borderline traits are often associated with primary psychopathy, which is where you get angry very easily, you don't have much remorse, but you're often kind of vulnerable, and you might act out in an aggressive way if provoked, or just for whatever reason. It's very overt, it's very sort of straightforward, there's not any real manipulation that comes from it, it's just a lack of real care about other people. But because borderlines are so sort of concerned with themselves, that's often what comes with it. In terms of covert narcissism, they're often secondary psychopath traits, which is more about manipulation. And also the thing about primary psychopathy is it can be worked on, and the kinks can be worked out in it, in terms of you can have behavioural management in order to help it out, you can have more emotional regulation, a safer environment, therapy to get out the issues. For secondary psychopathy, it's more a case of machiavellism, and you enjoy manipulating. It's very stagnant, there's not much that you can do about it, just the same goes for narcissists. There's not much wee room in healing from it or changing from it. You just enjoy manipulating. It's very much more cognitive, the secondary type of psychopath. They have a very, very, very low level of arousal, and a very, very low level of needing to change. It takes a hell of a lot upheaval for them to change. Primary psychopaths, they have a low level of arousal, but secondary psychopaths have a very, very, very low level of arousal, to the point where a lot of stuff will not faze them. They will not actually take much notice, or they might pretend to notice, but they genuinely don't. So there we go. Don't excuse me. So yeah, I think this was more about a myth about narcissism, which was that there is something good that can be promised from a narcissist that can be consistent, what they call future faking, and it can happen at any stage of life where this might happen to you. You might feel the need to hang on to a narcissist because you feel this sense of future faking to from a narcissist, that they might put out this projection that something is going to improve, they are going to change. The thing about narcissists is when they manipulate, when they hoovering is when they kind of try and suck you back in whatever way. That means texting, even energetically you might sense that they want to be near you again if some other form of supply or other person is not meeting their needs to the point that they need. So yeah, you might get this sort of level of future faking that might come about in terms of expecting something from them that they may promise to you as a lie that is not going to ever come to fruition, but is purely to keep you on their hamster wheel of you know, manipulation and sort of what's the word? Habits of degradation and abuse, basically, is kind of the idea from the future faking, just to give someone hope, basically, and not to fully come to the conclusion that someone is abusive. And as I said, like, it is possible to live in harmony with lots of narcissists. Like, not everyone's going to cause you problems, especially the ones that are self-aware. As I said, I have narcissistic traits myself. So, and having this happen consistently can give you this overall mindset that, you know, there is good to come from it, and just reinforce myths and sort of a sense of knocking your head against a brick wall. They say that's the thing about being mad, is that you try and do the same thing over and over again and expect a different outcome. That is not going to happen with a narcissist, though they want to keep you in a perpetual cycle that pleases them regardless of your own mental state, as they cannot feel empathy, or they do not care to feel empathy for you themselves. Oh, so this is something else surrounding their egos. They do not have they don't have often tight moral beliefs. It's often very flip-floppy. There's not a lot of, like, I like to think of myself as a person, for the good and bad, to be honest. It can be, it's not for the bad, it's always for the good, but it can put me in some sticky situations where I cannot conform to a situation that I do not agree with, that concerns me. If it doesn't concern me, then it doesn't concern me, it doesn't matter. But if it really affects me and there's something I can do about it, I often won't hold back, and that's positive, but it can inflict pain upon, stress upon me, because it means that I have to, at some level, engage in a situation that I may not want to. I think you can choose whether you want to engage or not, in any situation, but what I mean is that I have a strong moral, tight standpoint within myself as much as I can, and what is appropriate for the situation, because I have a level mind. The thing about narcissists is often they don't have that level of, what's the word? Moral standpoint that can come about in terms of consistent moral standpoint or tight beliefs, because they have to constantly be changing to accommodate their ego needs. They can change. There's a common phrase used in narcissism called shape-shifting, which basically means that you do not, that you basically completely change personality for each person that you interact with, to basically suit your requirements and needs. It's not a stable personality that you carry. They do say that narcissists don't actually have their own personality, and they often just adopt personalities of other people. There's something that I've come across called soul theft. Is it soul theft? Soul swapping. The thing about narcissists, what they want is to acquire or perceive to acquire all of your goodness whilst projecting all of their badness upon you. That's often what they want, and there's this thing called soul swapping, which is a holistic sense, whether you want to believe in this stuff or not, whether you want to acknowledge the soul realm or not. They talk about how this can happen apparently if you believe in past lives or not. If it can happen in past lives, it can happen through generations, that someone basically, however way you want to look at it, takes on your personality, because that's often what they do from a logistic sense and from a sense that you can recognise on the outside, take on your personality, and basically project their issues upon you. It's a level of soul swapping, however deep you want to get into it. I don't know how else I could explain that on a level that I could explain. They kind of try and they do suck your life force energy from you and suck your soul energy from you, and and it's what it is. They change you for whatever way that means, because they do suck your soul energy from you, and that's just a level of understanding. You can retrieve your soul back through prayer. You can retrieve your soul back through understanding what's going on and trying to protect your soul in a better way, so this doesn't happen in the future. So there we go. So in having such a flip-floppy mentality, it doesn't allow them to maintain their reality for very long in terms of their lies, in terms of their personality. They often, and the idea they portray, which is the main thing about the ego, which is that the idea that they are perfect often, and they are unable to take criticism in any way. It often crumbles the ego that they have created, and this happens when someone takes their mask off. They talk about having a mask as an ego, and when someone takes their mask off, you can see what they're genuinely like, and it crumbles their sense of reality, crumbles when they cannot maintain their reality as they like to portray it to other people. Yeah, and they need other people to validate their ego and their identity, because they can't do it themselves, because they're not really aware, I don't think, and they don't really give a fuck, to be honest, how they are paranoid about how other people perceive them, but they also, it's not coming from within themselves, it's coming from other people. The way they're portraying themselves, they sort of accumulate these traits to emulate, which is not a bad thing. Like, I think you should base yourself on people. Like, I have role models are good. Like, I used Demi Lovato for a role model throughout my entire life, and that's really helped me to, you know, keep a straight path. But that's the difference from soul sucking. I don't swap souls with Demi Lovato. I mean, like, I sound like literally psychotic. Like, I don't try and emulate every part of her life. I think even trying to emulate every part of her life, that can just come down to a neuroticism that you really admire her. And so what if you want to have like a shrine to Demi Lovato in your house? I don't. But, you know, do what you want. But at the same time, it's when someone tries to convince other people that they are someone they're not, and they try and literally take on the identity of someone that they are not, where it becomes an issue. There we go. And another reason they will future fake, you can also look at it as dangling a carrot in front of someone, is because they like to persist in conflict. They don't like to resolve conflict, because why would they do that? They like to keep the momentum going in relationships in order to gain narcissistic supply. You know, they don't really benefit from resolving conflict, because it means that nothing is happening, there's no drama. They thrive in the drama, they thrive in the conflict, they enjoy conflict, and they know that their narrative takes energy to kick up. Things like love bombing, it takes a hell of a lot of energy for them to love bomb a person in order to figure out all the bits stuff, even though it comes under a level of machiavellism, so maybe they would enjoy it to some level, who knows. I honestly don't know the inner workings of what they enjoy and don't, so I suppose it comes down to each individual person. When you are trying to, when you are carrot dangling, when you are love bombing or trying to take on another person's personality in order to get what you need from life, be that emotional support, be that whatever you need from life, a job, people's respect, whatever, it takes a lot of energy and effort, and you know, when you can't maintain this for any longer, you will carrot dangle in order to be have consistent supply. But it's important to understand that there's never going to be a, I mean, yeah, if you could look, I don't really want to go into that, you could look carrot dangling like you get a sense of karma back for, the thing about narcissists is I think it's just unhealthy to think about karma in terms of narcissists, because you have to think about yourself, because they're not thinking about you, so you need to think about yourself in the main. You can't be like, oh, my karma's going to come out well if I you know, enable a narcissist. That's not really the way to think about it, even though you will get a level of karma back. obviously from being kind to someone. Why would you not be kind back to someone if they're being fine to you? Like, why would you not be fine back to them? That's just not fair as a person, is it? You need to be, if someone's being fine with you, you should be fine back to them, and that's what it is. So anyway, but I think it's important not to put them before yourself, especially with someone that you're... I think when you start to do stuff like that, and this comes with recovery and learning what to discern from, I think you can, when you can build stronger relationships and relationships that are grounded on things that are more substantial, you can start to do things like putting other people in front of yourselves. Because when you start to put people, it's not a bad thing. The thing about it is you are made to feel like you know, you're just degraded in every way. It doesn't matter what way. You're degraded in so many ways. You can start to believe that the way you love is wrong. The way you love has never been wrong. Honestly, the wrong sits with them. The way that they cannot receive it, or they do not want to receive it, because love doesn't serve a narcissist. What serves a narcissist is dominance, control, you know, that sort of thing. They want conflict. They want admiration. They want all the high levels of emotion, of vibration. They don't really care about the middle level of contentment and love and all that. They like a level of peace, probably, but peace to them is probably supply, which would come from different levels of vibration which are extreme. They like the high conflict, they like the high admiration, they like the high shame, they like the high guilt in terms of other people, because that makes them feel good about themselves. They like the high momentum emotions, the high momentum experiences, the high momentum vibrations. So once you discern these type of people, you can build stronger, healthier relationships on a more solid foundation, where you can start to incorporate the things that we all need in relationships. We all need to, you know, give and receive concern for other people, and, you know, be validated in our experience. Like, you know, narcissists can't validate you. We all need validation. We all need love and things like that. But there we go. So some people, yeah. Oh, how many pages have I got left? Oh, I'm literally on the second page. Like, I've talked for like an hour and I'm on the second page.